The following program will make you want to grow things and experience new and wonderful dreams about your plants, garden, and garden design. Listener participation is always strongly advised. Good evening and welcome to Down the Garden Path with your host Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing, right here on Reality Radio 101. To get on board, send us an email right now. Our email address is instudio101@gmail.com. And now, right to your hosts of Down the Garden Path, Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing.
Thank you, and welcome everyone to Down the Garden Path, where we discuss down-to-earth tips and advice for your plants, gardens, and landscapes. As landscape designers and gardeners, we think it is important and possible to have great gardens that are low maintenance, and we want to help you make it happen. I am Joanne Shaw, landscape designer and owner of Down2Earth Landscape Design. I've been designing beautiful gardens and landscapes for homeowners east of Toronto for over a decade. With me across Zoom is my co-host Matthew Dressing. Welcome, Matthew.
Welcome, Joanne. Good evening, everyone. I'm Matthew Dressing, horticulturist and landscape designer and owner of Natural Affinity Garden Design. Natural Affinity is a landscape design and garden maintenance firm servicing Toronto and the Eastern GTA. Joanne and I enjoy hosting Down the Garden Path each week, bringing you interesting, relevant, and helpful topics to help you achieve a great garden. We learn right along with you from each other, from our research, and from the guests that join us here on the show. As always, we welcome your questions via social media, email, or phone call.
That's right, and we'd like to thank everyone who is joining us live for this version of Down the Garden Path, and let you know that you can always check out past shows of Down the Garden Path on your favorite podcast app. And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe so you'll be notified of new content. And please like and share or leave us a comment.
That's right. And it being the last Monday of August, where has the time gone? We have been talking all about trees this month in August. And we're going to wrap up our discussion about deciduous trees and upright evergreens. And we're joined by a guest this evening. We're going to talk about native trees and tree care with Dave Ordanis of Ordanis Tree Care. So do you have a tree question? Perhaps a tree care question for Dave? And you want to join the conversation? We'd love to hear from you. Send us an email at instudio101@gmail.com.
That's right, and I'm excited to welcome Dave to the show.
Hello.
As we talked about, the first show of our tree month, we did talk about native trees, but it certainly was not a deep dive. So We're excited to have an arborist here that can answer more questions specifically on why to choose native and what are the recommended ones, and maybe some that people often don't think about. So we're really excited to kind of do a double talk this month, right, Matt, on native trees.
That's right. That's right.
So welcome to the show. And so your company is called Ordanis Tree Care, and you've been an arborist for 8 years. And we've worked together recently, and so I'm excited that you're able to join us on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's great to kind of preach what needs to be preached.
Excellent, excellent. So why don't you start off just by saying, why you think it's important that we plant more native trees? I know that's a big question, but
no, it's a good question. So I'm an arborist. I travel every day. I look at everybody's trees, front yards, backyards, etc. And you sort of see the same 10 trees. Everybody sort of, maple, honey locust, which is a native tree, a good one. But a lot of stuff gets overplanted because it's just simple to go, oh, this one or that one. But it's not the best for the environment. You want to sort of diversify the urban landscape for many reasons. One, I would say the main one is invasive pests. The emerald ash borer, which has knocked out the ash trees.
Yeah.
Before that would have been Dutch elm disease, which really hurt the elms. So yeah, it's better to diversify and go native because our native trees have better defenses against most pests. So.
And do they also stand up to our weather? Because that's another issue, right? So native
absolutely.
trees can kind of handle the craziness of our weather sometimes.
Absolutely. The drought, especially the droughts, this year, that's a big one. And I find just through experience, the North American trees have a little bit of a longer lifespan than the European or Asian trees.
Okay.
But that's my personal opinion. So
Yes, yeah, definitely. Have you seen the trend move toward, like, I know I was a victim of the ash borer. I had 3 city trees I have a corner lot, so I had 3 city trees, and they were not doing well because of the emerald ash borer. And then we had the ice storm, so I lost all 3 trees because they weren't healthy enough to stay standing. And the city gave me a choice of, a handful. And I felt like those choices were a little bit better than they might have been, a few years ago, or well, that was many years ago. But are you finding that cities or municipalities are getting smarter?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Definitely. It depends where. I'm finding that certain municipalities are really good. Other ones aren't quite learning. Everything's better than it was because, we'll call it, it's monoculturing.
Yes.
Ash was insane because it's so easy. They would just, green ash had, I think, a 96% success rate. So how can you go wrong with that?
Yeah.
But then we lose everything, right? So now I'm finding they're putting 5 to 10 different species per street. Which if something else comes, which it will, oak wilt is the next on the list. So yeah, they are learning finally.
That's good.
Which is good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Matt.
I was just gonna say, so oak wilt, I think it's definitely kind of newer to us. Do you know much about the oak wilt for some of our listeners who haven't heard too much about it?
So I do know it's, I can't remember exactly where, but we're pretty close. It's coming. It's a matter of when, not if.
Yeah.
And that's why oak is a fantastic tree to plant, and they're fantastic trees. They live long. Acorns provide a lot of food for many animals, but if it comes, it's going to be the same, as the emerald ash borer, and it's just going to wipe everything out. Yeah. So I try not to plant oak if I can get around it. Hickory is the number one for replanting, just because of hickory. If you don't know, is pecan. Any hickory produces a pecan. Depending on the species, you'll get a bit of a different nut. Pecan hickory is pecan, like the commercial pecan.
Okay.
But shellbark and shagbark, from what I hear, are actually as good or better of a nut than the pecan hickory. Just the difference is pecan hickory will produce nuts within 5 to 10 years, where most, if not all, of the other hickories will be about 30 years. Ooh. Unless it's grafted. So there's that too, right? So if you're making a business out of it, you want the pecan, but for the homeowner, they probably would go with any of the other hickories. Then they don't have to clean up nuts for 30 years. So.
30 years, that's right. So just to go back to the oaks for a second, is it, because that's a big family, right? Yep. Pyramidal oaks, red oak. Is it the wilt, and is wilt an insect or is it a fungus?
Yeah, it's a fungus.
Okay.
From what I hear, I haven't done too much research on it. It's come up from Texas. And I think it's been coming up from Texas for 60 years, slow and steady. And it's now it's right at the southern border of Lake Ontario.
Okay.
And there's a small jump it needs to make to get to, us.
Right.
But it's still not there.
Okay. And it will, and it affects all oaks.
Yeah. Now, I don't know. I'm sure, so with the emerald ash borer, for instance, it affected each ash differently. I found that white ash got hit really hard, really fast. Green ash hung on a lot longer. Like they would sort of coppice or sucker out for a few years and then finally die, where the white ash in 1 year could just be bone dead.
Okay.
So I'm sure that oaks will be the same. Some oaks will be worse. Some oaks will be able to fight it a bit better. But yeah, there's not a lot of research up here, at least, because I think depending on the weather, who knows, might be a bit different. But
have you heard anything out of the States as to which species are being hit harder versus others, or native versus non-native?
That's a good question. I have not. That'll probably be on my research for the wintertime when I'm not working 6-7 days a week. But I'm assuming, there'll be some differences. From what I found with the white versus green ash, of the two most common ash, green ash is more hardy. They are more vigorous. They can handle more abuse. And they were definitely better at dealing with the emerald ash borer than, say, the white ash. I would say that in that same statement, oak, for the red oaks, I think we'll be able to handle it a lot better than the white oaks, due to the fact that red oaks are, they're not a final succession tree, meaning red oaks will grow in more spots than a white oak will, and a little bit quicker as well.
That's good to know.
So, but again, you know what? We're going to find out.
Yeah, definitely.
Unfortunately, we're going to find out.
Yeah. Now, are you still, as an arborist, removing ash trees?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, so the emerald ash borer came in, I believe, Essex County in the early 2000s, and it sort of moved up from there. I did a lot of, I used to live in Pickering. There was a lot of removals in Pickering 5 years ago. Now I'm in Clarington, and I'm finding it's sort of, I feel like I'm in a blast in the past because
it's just coming.
Again, right? So it's moving from there up. Now it's been in Ottawa, so it's coming down from Ottawa. And I think in Belleville area, it's like a pocket here and there, and it moves up north. It's still really good. There's a lot of ash. It's not affected there yet. But it's just like a slow spread. It's going to go everywhere. So, yeah.
Okay.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
I'm just going to jump in as we have a listener question. So for those who are maybe just tuning in, we've got Dave Ordanis from Ordanis Tree Care talking. We're doing a deeper dive on our native tree, a follow-up to mine and Joanne's show earlier in the month, which you can find on your local podcast provider. Rachel writes in this evening, hello down the garden path. I love the show. I live in Niagara Falls, Ontario, and will be planting a red maple tree this coming fall. What is the best mulch to use in our growing zone for our tree? Thank you. My quick question to Rachel perhaps is, as you said, say a red maple tree, are you thinking like red maple, like Acer rubrum? Or are you thinking, Dave's smiling too on Zoom, are you thinking, Acer platanoides, the Crimson King with the red leaf maple? I agree with you.
Yes. Yeah. So there's not all maple trees are created equal, Rachel. So David, take it away on why she should plant.
Well, So I don't want to say don't plant a maple, but they are so overplanted. There's so many maple. I work, like I say, I work all over the map, and it would be very rare for me not to see a maple. In regards to the mulch really doesn't matter, especially with the growth zones. Yeah, but if you could get away from planting a maple, I would. There's a lot of different species, depending on if you're looking for a fast growing tree or fall color or this or that. There's many better suited trees, especially in Niagara. You can grow so much more down there. But if you're sold on the maple, I wouldn't worry about the mulch. Your best bet would be to go with sort of an aged wood chip mulch. Definitely don't go dyed mulch. I like to sort of relate it to dyed mulch is McDonald's, and any natural wood chip mulch from a wood chipper, from an arborist, would be, you know, organic vegetables, right? Yeah. That's sort of the difference. The tree, it's not going to kill the tree, but you're going to get a way better product in regards to the growth and the happiness of the tree with a natural mulch.
Yeah, I always like the composted pine is my kind of go-to. So anything that's, you know, whether or composted cedar versus going with the dyed, we often talk about that on the show, Dave, about not recommending any of the dyed mulches.
Yeah, I mean, so if another thing is, people have personal preferences, and I always, you know, I'll come in and say, don't do this, don't do that. Again, it's their house. I only see it one day, right? For a couple of years, they live there. So if it's a dyed mulch thing, what's best is to at least put the natural mulch underneath, and then just top dress it with that black or red or whatever you want to do, right? If that's the way they want to go.
That's right. And we should give, when you talk about the red maple, Rachel, so Crimson King, which is technically a red maple, it is really a Norway maple, right? Which is actually deemed an invasive species.
Non-native invasive.
Non-native, sorry?
Non-native invasive.
Invasive.
Because we have native invasive too, right?
Right.
But the non-native invasive are worse, I would say.
Okay. So down the road, what is the downside, you know, aside from, I mean, I have 2 on my property, so I know that came with my house, that all the baby trees, they get planted, that type of thing. So there is a down, you know, what else is it about the Crimson King?
Well, yeah, so any Norway maple, again, is super overplanted. And actually, I'm going to sidetrack for a second. The reason, and I sort of just figured this out on my own, I think about probably 50, 60 years ago, everything was native, and it was the new cool hip thing to plant non-native, right? So everyone was planting Norway maples and this and that. And then now that's all that's around. There is no mature native, you know, like I've only ever seen 5 hickories in a backyard or this or that, or I mean, cucumber magnolia. Ontario's only native magnolia tree. I've maybe seen 1 or 2, you know, and back to the Norway maple though, their seeds, they're so invasive, because of any maple tree is kind of invasive because of how many keys they let off, but our natural birds can't eat their seeds, where they can eat silver maple, red maple, sugar, black. And that's another reason why there's so many saplings around, is because our natural birds, etc., can't eat their seeds.
Wow, that's fascinating. I did not realize that.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Huh. So there you go, Rachel. So hope you don't mind our take on things, but good luck with your planting down in Niagara.
That's right. We have another listener question. Pam has written in, hello, my question. Are there any lawn fertilizers that I put down this fall that could harm my trees? And thanks for the show.
Ooh.
That is a good question. I'm not super knowledgeable with fertilizers, etc. But I would say you're probably okay, just due to the fact that for the fertilizers, if they start killing trees, they're going to go out of business really quick.
Yeah.
And I've never really seen fertilizers affect a tree in that way. So you're definitely good to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think just the fact that they are slow release, and they're meant, Pam, to go to the roots that level of the lawn, as opposed to deeper that the tree roots are, that kind of
Absolutely.
thing. So,
Yeah, for sure.
So I think over fertilizing is not good for the lawn, and not certainly wouldn't be good for the trees either. But nobody wants to do that.
Yep.
So. I had a question for you, Dave, about tree bags.
Yeah.
We rave about them. I think they really, I try to encourage my customers, because people think they're watering their trees, but really, like, they're quick, hosing it down, especially newly planted trees.
Yep.
So I recommend tree bags once or twice a week, depending on, now once a week would be fine. In July, maybe twice a week we needed, right, with that drought.
Oh, yeah.
What are your thoughts?
So I think it's definitely better than not watering. The only downside I would say, or the biggest downside, would be you want to water the drip line more than the trunk, right? So, and those are going to drip down the trunk more than they're going to get to the drip line. Still better than not watering the tree.
Mm-hmm. And a newly planted tree, like, I think the drip line is fairly close to the root ball. Absolutely.
Nothing would be better, though, than to actually, get out there 5 or 10 minutes and water the whole the mulch ring. But tree bags still definitely work. The reason the cities use it is because they can't. You know how much money it would cost to go around and water them with a truck. That's kind of why they do it. But I think if you're a homeowner and you just had a single tree planted, for what it's worth, just go and water it by with hose, and you'll just have better results that way.
Okay. But it's the drip line, remembering to do the drip line, and I think more like I've seen people out there, when I've gone on walks, and it's like a 10-second spray, and that's not what it needs either. So that's kind of why I recommend the tree bag, because at least you're getting a lot of water into the ground.
Oh yeah, and it's a slow,
and it's slow
release too. Yep.
Yeah.
And another thing, it's like watering your vegetables, your flowers. You don't want to water in the sun and wet the leaves. You want to just water the ground. And it depends on the species. Some species you can overwater. Actually, I had really bad luck this year with spruce, white spruce. I don't know what it was, but I lost 2 or 3 as new plantings, and I almost think they were overwatered. Right.
Yeah.
And then, but on the flip side, I have a couple hickories in my backyard, and I left the water on one of my shagbark for 36 hours.
Ooh.
Right. I forgot it, and I did this and that, and then the next night, oh, okay. And it's fine. So
it's fine. Wow.
Yeah. They're a swamp tree too. So
yes. That's good.
Depends on what kind of tree it is. So
yeah. And then talking about nut trees, I think of the black walnut.
Great tree.
Oh, excuse me, as I sneeze. Sorry. Are they though? Like, because I'm coming across some landscapes where the landscapers, I've been called in after the fact, so the landscaping's done, and the contractor or the homeowner's like, now we need a beautiful garden here, and it's
Yeah. Well, so black walnuts are pretty fast growers. Like, they, if they're in the right spot, they can get 60 feet tall in 30 years, kind of thing. The only downside to them is the size of their nuts. Like, it's almost the size of a tennis ball, and every year they have tons of them. And in the wrong place, they're gonna, over a driveway or something, it's not the best spot. But the trees themselves, very strong, very hardy. I haven't personally had a black walnut versus your commercial walnut is Persian walnut or white walnut, Juglans regia,
Okay.
and black walnut is Juglans nigra, and they, I've heard, are better than the taste for the nut. Is actually a better nut than the white walnut, but they're harder to husk and to actually extract the nut.
Okay.
But yeah, they're a fantastic tree other than the amount of mess they create, and they stain. You know, if you have a nice, you know, these modern homes are very white and this and that, and they stain and whatever, but fantastic tree.
Now, but also the chemical that they give off. So then there are certain plants that you can't plant within.
Yep.
You know,
I mean, I've never really seen them demo. I mean, this is a personal, I guess, observation. It's not as bad as people say. It's not like it's not like you can't plant anything under there, but they definitely will make things struggle if they're not juggling tolerant.
Yeah. So for our listeners, there is a chemical that the roots give off on a black walnut called juglone, and a lot of native things can grow under them, like are tolerant, right? Which is kind of shows you that Mother Nature works together, right? But although Japanese maples are juglone tolerant, they're on the list, but there are many things that really do struggle that some gardeners have success with and others don't. And growing vegetable gardens, obviously, you know, near a tree, a juglone or a black walnut tree is also challenging. So yeah. Excellent.
Continuing, maybe going backwards again, Ron has written in, hello, and he's wondering about watering trees. How important is watering trees, or are watering trees, during the upcoming fall months?
Good question. Yeah, so it's actually more important to water trees in the fall as it would be. I mean, even with this, it's important to water them all the time. Species dependent, obviously. What's happening now, not quite now, but coming up, is trees are going to start to shut down, and they like a little bit more water before they do that. So fall watering is very important. So we always pray for a bit of fall rain especially after a summer like this. I like to, again, it's always species dependent because you can overwater some things and you cannot overwater other things. Mm-hmm. I like the 5 minutes every other day rule for most stuff.
Oh, okay. Just 5 minutes, you think?
Yep. I think about 5 minutes every other day, you know, so yeah, I think that's probably pretty good, especially now with, I think we're going to get a pretty bad winter as well. So it's nice to just give them a little more water before that.
Would you say evergreens need a bit more than deciduous trees, or does it matter?
Spruce, I would say no. Again, I'm finding a lot of spruce don't like standing water. That's the biggest thing. No, yeah, it depends on the soil too. That's a good one. Some soil dissipates the water better than others. I think all trees roughly though need, you know, they all need water.
Yeah.
The day. So.
Okay. Yeah, and often people forget about their city trees, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry, Matt.
No, that's okay. I just had maybe two follow-up questions on some points we were talking about. You were mentioning that some trees like a little bit more water than other trees, that you can overwater certain trees.
Yeah.
What maybe you could list some of the common ones that you see in landscapes that that could be overwatered or often underwatered. So maybe examples on that two parts of the list.
Yeah, spruce definitely what I think would be number one. Most species, if not all, can be overwatered. I know, for instance, hackberry, common hackberry, if they don't get water once a month, they'll die, but they don't want too much water.
Too much water.
Yeah.
Like, do you mean like standing water again, or?
Yeah, mainly standing water. That if it's well drained soil, then they'll do fine. But if it's a clay or a lot of new housing developments are, I mean, everybody knows they just take all the nice topsoil, sell it to whoever, and then just give back just garbage soil. That stuff really retains the water. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, just sort of like a good watering, like a good watering to wet the tree, but well drained, no really standing to damage kind of deal.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, and then on the flip side, most hickory you can overwater. Black gum, even red maple is a swamp tree. You can really water them. Autumn blaze, which is silver maple, red maple hybrid, you can really water them too. Like you almost can't overwater them. Birch like their water. A couple more. Oh, black walnut, big swamp tree too. They love the water. Okay. And I mean, even some people have issues with, like, they need to start sucking up some water.
Yes, and people with drainage issues or something like that, where they've got a wet area and planting a tree other than a willow, right?
Yeah, well, that's it, right? Because everyone thinks, I mean, and it's a great tree in the right spot, but you don't want that in your front yard. I know in Toronto, I don't think you're actually legally allowed to plant a willow anymore because of how much it can damage the under structures, right? The piping and this and that. Yeah. Even sugar maple, I find really, really sucks the water. Norway, even though I would recommend never to plant a Norway anywhere ever again in Ontario, they do a really good job at sucking up water too.
Do you think that kind of contributes to why they're so successful?
Yeah, they're just a really hardy tree. Mind you, they're pretty short-lived. Like 100-year-old Norway maple's really old, where 100-year-old sugar maple is, especially in a forest setting, is very young.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.
Yeah.
So I work in a garden center as well, and a lot of people come in and they're worried about their trees and worried about watering their trees. Much like Ron was asking about, what would you recommend for someone who has a big mature tree that they feel that they want to water, something that's been there for 30 years? How would you go about watering that? Would you still recommend the 5 minutes every other day along the drip line, or do they need something more?
I would definitely do more. I mean, just that standard lawn sprinkler, the one that goes back and forth, probably an hour, depending. Like, you could let it go for an hour, especially with this really dry, hot weather we've had. You could definitely water them for an hour. But I also find the older the tree is, they have their own way. Like, they have stored carbohydrates in the trunk and this and that. So they're used to dealing with a bad year versus a good year.
Right.
It's not make it or break it if they don't water them. But if they want to and just help them out, I would say about an hour wouldn't hurt, especially on these really dry days.
And what are your thoughts about, like, the root feeder systems? That needle that you hook up to the end of your hose and it injects, there's like a little fertilizer thing in it. It can dissolve and add fertilizer to the water, or just add water that you basically inject the needle into soft ground and spray it out.
Again, I'm more on the production side rather than of arboriculture rather than the fertilizing and this and that, but they call that deep root fertilizing is what you're talking about?
Yes,
right, that's another name for it.
It works. I have firsthand experience. I got a bunch of stuff at my house done this year, and what a difference. I don't know what the lady used exactly, but I think it was a high nitrogen. But wow, like a bunch of cedars I rescued off of jobs and just brought them home. And
that's what we do in the industry, right? We don't get paid well, but we can bring home and rescue lots of plants.
I can't. And I also rescued a crimson spire oak, which is a columnar English oak hybridized with native white oak, and so it does the columnar form, but it goes nice red in the fall. And I planted it for my neighbor. And wow, what a difference this year. I can't believe it. So yeah, the deep root fertilizing definitely works. Now, you don't want to fertilize newly planted trees. It can harm the roots system because they use a lot of sodium to dissolve the fertilizers in the soil. So it's best to leave fertilizing for a year or two after newly planted trees.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah. Well, because you think, oh, I'm going to fertilize my tree I just planted, and then it can actually kill.
Yeah.
What about something like those transplant fertilizers with the high phosphorus in it? Would you include that in no fertilizing as well?
Well, so yeah, like that's a tough one. When I do my plantings, I use a mycorrhizae fertilizer.
Okay.
And it's a different type of fertilizer. So what that does is sort of connects the roots to the soil and allows the roots to pull the nutrients out of the soil faster, which will establish your tree faster, which will help it to grow quicker, better, larger. Those are totally fine. Yeah, it's mainly the sodium that you want to stay away from.
Okay.
Excellent.
Did you it looked like you were going to say something, Joanne?
No, I wasn't. I can never tell if we need whether you have a question or not from a listener.
I'll just start doing this. Right?
Yeah.
But we do have two.
Excellent. Well, we want to thank everybody for writing in questions and for listening to us here on Reality Radio this evening and joining us on Down the Garden Path. And we're loving that we got to do a deep dive, 5 episodes on trees. So yeah, take it away, Matt.
That's right. So Claudette has written in, and if you have a question, you can write in as well in studio101@gmail.com. And Claudette writes, "Hello, I'm moving into a new house and it has a sycamore tree in the backyard. Someone told me that it sheds its bark. Is this true? Thank you."
Yep, definitely. A true American sycamore, when it's young, it'll have sort of almost a camo looking bark. White, it's very white and then sort of spotty with some brown and greenish. That might be a little more London plain, but as it gets older, the trunk will get flaky, more brown, black, gray, and that's totally normal. Those are very hardy trees, so I wouldn't worry about them.
Excellent.
Very fast growing too.
Oh, that's good. And I do have, so London Plane is in the sycamore family?
So a London plane is a American sycamore Chinese plane hybrid.
Okay, so not a native.
Nope, but I mean, it's definitely a great tree.
Okay.
I plant them. I wouldn't deter people from planting them. If it's a make or break of London plane versus American sycamore, I would obviously go American sycamore. They have a bit of a different style, mainly the bark, but they're both really quick. From what I've heard, they can grow 70 feet in 20 years if they're happy.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, after the ice storm, my street was full of ash trees, and we all lost them.
Yep.
And when I had the choice with the city, of course, I jumped all over that, whereas my neighbors got what they got, right?
Yep.
And so I have neighbors that got an ivory silk, and then somebody else got a serviceberry. And because I'm a corner house, I wanted 2 at my front door to be the same, and I chose London Plane. And my tree, like in the same amount of years, they're 3 times the size of the ivory silk and the serviceberry.
Yep.
They're really, I mean, and those are smaller city trees for sure.
Right.
And I've watered my trees. I take my tree bags, give my neighbors hints, right? And I put the tree bag on their trees and tell them to remind them to water their trees. But yeah, I'm just amazed at how fast it grew and how nice it looks.
Right, and this is another thing. It's the right tree in the right place. So I find ivory silk is a very common tree planted. Serviceberry, same thing. Both great trees. They're a good tree to plant under power lines because they're even still they plant maple and this and that under the power lines, and then they have to hack them.
Yeah.
Really not nicely. And I mean, this is my personal preference. I would prefer trees under power lines to just be naturally smaller so they don't have to be hacked in half, and then planting, sycamores and this and that. in areas where you don't need to top them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
That makes sense. And they're also nice choices for people who in smaller yards, when it's a semi or it's a smaller yard, we can't put a sycamore or
silver maple.
silver maple. I mean, it's just not enough room. So that's where I find as a designer, using things like a serviceberry or an ivory silk.
Yep. And another fantastic choice for smaller trees, native and rare endangered, is dwarf hackberry. I know Matt really likes the common hackberry. Dwarf hackberry is the Latin is Celtis tenuifolia, and they they'll be about 30 feet tall still, but they have a bit of a tastier berry and really, really almost eerie growth. Like I don't know if you guys know Camperdown elm, and how they have that really spooky growth habit. They look haunted almost, where the dwarf hackberry is very similar. Like they get really crossing branches a lot, up and down a lot. Yeah, very, very cool tree, and you can plant them in almost anything. They're very soil tolerant tree.
Okay.
They like minimal water, so they're very low maintenance. And yeah, that is a fantastic tree for a small tree, but staying native. The berries, birds love them. I know cedar waxwing in particular loves the berries. And they have a very similar bark to the common hackberry, that weird corky bark. So very cool tree. I have planted one of my parents, and this year, I don't know what happened, it's grown like 4 feet.
Oh wow.
But out, not up, out.
Out. Okay.
Yeah.
How are you finding? So I think a lot of times our listeners and I know my clients, if I'm not buying the trees or sourcing the trees for them, then they're going either to local garden centers like where Matt works, or unfortunately the big box stores where the selection isn't great.
Right.
So where, are you finding that people are growers or the availability of even purchasing young native trees?
Yeah, it's definitely tough. If you go to most nurseries, don't have dwarf hackberry. Hickory is really hard to find in nurseries. Black gum, cherry birch, which is a native, really rare endangered birch.
Really? Now, does that have the white? I haven't even heard of that one. Is it the
cherry
same?
birch? Yeah, it looks like a mature cherry birch. Almost looks like a black cherry. And a birch. It looks like a black cherry combined with a white birch.
So the bark is white?
Nope, the bark is a gray color.
Gray. Okay.
Yeah, certain species are really hard to find. There's a couple of the really big nurseries that have everything, and they'll have small bits of this and that. But yeah, that is a huge one, is finding trees, because everyone grows maple, sycamore, tulip, this and that, but they only grow what they are asked to. They're not going to grow dwarf hackberry, like they're not going to grow hundreds of them when no one even knows what it is.
Right.
That's why this is important right now, is to sort of explain, look, there's a lot of different species that are fantastic that you don't know about. And once the demand is there, they'll start growing them. It's just getting the demand up.
Yeah. Now, do you want to talk a little bit more about hickories?
We need a whole other
we need a whole other show, do we? Oh, okay.
No, just there's 6 native hickories in Ontario. Shagbark hickory, shellbark, bitternut is the most common, widespread. You have pignut, mockernut, and then red hickory. I would say is the mockernut and red hickory. Most, even people that know trees, don't really know about them.
Okay.
And then pecan hickory is it's native to the southern states, but it's actually hardy zone 5, so most of us can grow it. And then there's a lot of hybrids, and I'm still learning about the hybrids. Bitternut almost hybridizes with everything. Shagbark hybridizes with a lot. Pecan will hybridize with every single one, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. But now they're not as messy as, let's say, a black walnut. So they, you know,
Nope.
I think there would be people who are like, you know, well, I don't want a nut tree because it's going to
Right.
be messy.
Well, and firsthand experience, actually today, I went to go collect seed early in the morning before work, and the squirrels have ransacked every single tree I was going to collect. So it's like walnuts are, I mean, squirrels love walnuts, but there's so many of them around that it's not a super hot commodity, where around here, hickory, they're very rare. So the squirrels know, like, I'm going there first. And then
Oh, wow. It's a delicacy.
Oh yeah. Oh my God, it's insane. So if that's the deter, I would say don't worry about it until every other person has a hickory in their backyard. Then it's not going to be as much of an issue. But I can't believe how fast they picked the nuts off those trees. Because, yeah.
Now, are they eating them right away, or are they now digging up everybody's garden, like planting and burying them for the winter?
Both. I mean, what I found today was there was a lot of, you see the nut, like the actual nut, the shell, just scattered everywhere. But I do know that they'll also stash them.
Okay.
So.
Okay, well, that's good to know, though, for anybody who's a bird lover and wants to plant trees. I'm often asked about that, right? What trees, like serviceberry is great because of the berries, hackberry because of the berries. So planting, thinking, you know, that's another way, so you don't have to save you buying bird seed, right? Is that you plant a tree. But you said it does take a few years for the nuts to rot, like to.
Oh yeah. Again, they say about 30 years.
Okay.
So if you buy a nursery tree, so a very common size would be 50 mil caliper, which is about an 8 to 10 foot tree. That in a hickory, that's probably 8 to 10 years old. So you'd need another 20-ish years before you're getting nuts.
Okay. But that's good. But then that's, you know, good for the environment in 20 years, like better for the environment, right? Like that's the thing. Exactly. We need to plant them now so that they are here in 20 years.
Yep. Well, It's important for the urban landscape to start planting stuff that is going to provide more for the urban wildlife.
Right. Right.
Right. Rather than just, oh, I like this tree. It looks nice. Okay. Well, it doesn't do anything for the animals.
That's right. That's right. And Matt, you said we have some questions?
We do. We have 3 listeners who've written in. Sam writes in, hello all, new listener here from Bedford Falls, New York. Thanks for the advice, Sam. So thank you for tuning in and listening, and welcome to the show, Sam. We also have, Carla has written in, hello from Dallas, Texas. Due to all the hurricane weather, we have suffered a bit of minor damage on our maple trees. Any thoughts as to what to do to repair and nurture them back? Thank you.
Definitely hire an arborist. Try not to do it yourself, depending on the size of the trees, obviously. You just want to take out any of the tears. I'm not sure how damaged they are. It all depends. It's super hard for me to tell you what to do without seeing the tree. But it's just keep as much canopy as you can on the tree because it's suffered a lot. Sometimes you can even just leave it alone and see what it does next year.
But it's a good time. If you think you need a professional, then it's worth calling a professional. Because often the professional, if there's nothing to do, then they won't do it, right?
Right. Well, yeah, and even then, there's good and bad professionals in any trade. Some guys will sort of milk you for a bit and then remove the tree, but a good professional will tell you, look, this tree has to go because it's just suffered too much. Remove it, plant something better, or plant the same thing. At least it's going to have a fresh start, or he's going to repair it and it'll be fine.
Great.
Do you have maybe an example of just from your own experience, some sort of damage that the high winds have caused in maybe our area that Carla might be able to recognize, or an example of just like, that's too heavy of a damage, you got to go under just windy circumstances?
The best experience I witnessed in regards to storm damage would be the ice storm of 2013, 2014. Different, but sort of similar. I found we had, back to wind though, we had some big crazy winds 2018, spring of 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, I find it's sort of a natural pruner. It'll take stuff out that wasn't properly pruned or too heavy or weak.
Mm-hmm.
And then life goes on. The tree's fine. You repair what it did. The
Mm-hmm.
ice storm was a little bit worse than that. But yeah, it depends on how much canopy is damaged in the tree. I would say anything over 50-60% that's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah. And again, without seeing it, it's
Yeah.
tough for sure.
Hope that helps.
Yeah, hopefully that helps, Carla.
Yeah.
William has written in, hello, just some general tips, please, about locations to plant a tree. I'm not sure if yet I will plant or what type of tree I will plant, but your general ideas. Thank you. And he's writing from Washington, D.C.
Very cool. Yeah, it depends. If you have a lot of room, I would definitely do sort of a nut tree, or I don't know that the urban trees down there, I don't know what species are around. Definitely plant something different than what's common.
Mm-hmm. So not what your neighbor has. Try not to plant, look on both sides of you and don't plant that.
Well, that's a very common thing. Oh, I liked my neighbor's tree and I'm going to plant the same thing.
Same, yes.
So it's best to switch it up. And then if it's a smaller area or under power lines, then, go with something different. Magnolia is a good one. I mean, the non-native magnolias, there's many of them. Saucer magnolia, stuff like that. The dwarf hackberry is really good. Pawpaw, another fantastic tree. Fruit tree, Ontario native fruit tree. Pawpaw goes right down the eastern states. Yeah.
Okay.
It's super hard. Again, it's super hard to say without seeing the location.
Yeah, for sure.
But different. Go with something different for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. Wow, we've almost at the end of the hour. I can't believe it. Dave, you've given us lots of great information and suggestions. So everyone listening, I hope you are writing things down like I am for sure, and are enjoying the show. Was there any other questions, Joanne, that you had, or maybe is there something, Dave, that is maybe close to your heart that you'd like to share with our listeners, or any topics or issues that you'd like to bring up regarding the trees?
No, I think we've gone over a lot of really good stuff. Definitely, like I say, plant different stuff, not the common, what everyone has planted.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get your hands on American chestnut, true American chestnut, that's blight resistant, that's another really, really good one. American chestnut was the first native tree to get really decimated, I guess I'll say, from a non-native pest or disease or fungus. They're now coming out with blight resistant American chestnuts. And if you look into them, they were the superior tree about 100 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
They're beautiful when they're all in flower, right?
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Yep.
Beautiful leaves.
And chestnuts, I mean, again, back to the nut trees.
Yeah.
Chestnuts are fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
No, other than that, I think we went over a lot of good stuff.
We often get asked about, what to prepare, preparing our gardens for winter. And, we talked about watering in the fall. Is there anything else? I mean, Matt and I also recommend now's not the time to fertilize trees, that type of thing. But is there anything, like staking it? We can get into that whole other, if it's a new tree, does it need to be staked and wrapped as far as a cedar tree? I mean, is there fall prep?
Fall prep, I like to just sort of stay natural and just let the tree do its thing.
Mm-hmm.
Staking the trees, unless the tree needs to be staked, I don't stake them. I find that they'll actually root faster not being staked. You put them under a bit of stress and they root faster.
Mm-hmm.
Any tree, the healthiest trees grow in moderate stress. It's like anybody, right? If you just hand feed people then they're
Yeah.
gonna, grow up and they'll be 25 and I don't know what to do with life.
Yeah.
Same thing with trees, I find. So
Yeah. Okay.
no,
No.
just yeah. If anything, obviously, you'll notice if leaves wilt, water them. But other than that, no, just let them do their thing.
So Beth has kind of written in maybe with one of our last questions. Where can our listeners find you or contact you? Do you have a website, social media, etc., or an email address they can send something to you?
Well, so I'm actually just in the midst of website. I'm going to do a Facebook page sooner rather than later. I'm a bit of a workaholic, so work comes first. I mean, my cell phone has been the way to reach me for the last 8 years. But yeah, there's going to be a website, ordanistreecare.com.
Why don't you spell that for us so people can write that down?
Absolutely. ORDANIS tree care at, or you can even email me, ordanistreecare@gmail.com.
Okay. We'll put that in our show notes as well, everybody.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm still working on all that stuff. It's hard to do that and run a business.
Yeah, it is.
He's out saving our trees, people. We'll
Yeah.
give him some slack here, right?
That's right. That's
And
right.
like Joanne said, we'll make sure that we have that information for everybody.
Yeah, I mean,
as
even
well.
you can put my name on. They can just Facebook me. Right now, my personal Facebook is fine. I don't mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have LinkedIn as well, so anybody who's in the industry.
I'm sort of caveman-ish in that sense. Where
That's okay.
I just cut the trees and then answer my phone. But
That's right.
Any Facebook messages are welcomed. No problem. If they have any questions or anything like that, it's totally fine.
Yeah, and to let our local listeners know that you work in the GTA, Pickering, Clarington, Peterborough area, so kind of the east side of the city. So
I'll go to Toronto too.
Will you? Okay.
Yep.
Good to know.
Yep.
How about North, Stouffville, Uxbridge?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Good.
Yep.
Excellent.
All
Well,
right.
I think that brings us to the end of the show.
I think it does.
So,
Time flies.
Wow.
I know.
That was an hour, eh? Holy
That was
moly.
that was an hour. That's great. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Matt, you've got the list.
Yeah,
that's
thank
right.
you.
Oh, sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Oh yes, no, thank you very much. So I think it a great addition and rounded out our month on trees very well. So thanks for making the time. Native trees and native trees.
Native.
That's the most important.
Yeah.
That's right. So Rachel, Pam, Ron, Claudette, Sam, Carla, William, and Beth, thank you very much for all of your questions. Thank you everybody for again tuning in and spending your Monday night with us. Thanks, Gary, for helping us produce this fantastic show as always.
Yes, and please remember everyone to check if you tuned in late or if you want to know about our past episodes, the rest of the tree month that we had in August, then please search for Down the Garden Path on your favorite podcast app, and this show will be up hopefully by the end of the week. And we really value our listeners, so thank you for joining us down the garden path.
That's right.
Thank you for listening to Down the Garden Path with your hosts Joanne Shaw and Matthew Dressing, right here on Reality Radio 101.